Today I'm here to tell you about one of my favorite albums of 2017 so far. And normally I don't do a lot of album reviews of like new music on this channel, but I thought it would be important to do this one, not only because the artist is a very good friend of mine, but because there's not much attention on this album. It's only got a couple hundred views on YouTube. I really want to do my part to promote it because I do think it is a fantastic album, and I would not be covering it if I didn't think that. I've been friends with this artist for 4 years. I have not promoted their all of their music or anything like that. Sometimes I haven't been the biggest fan of it, but this one in particular I think is a major growth for this artist, the artist being just Fern. Is the current name that they're going under for this project. And there's definitely a big element of my excitement over witnessing their growth as a musician that has led me to want to talk about this album, because the way that it makes up for a lot of Fern's shortcomings as an artist is very interesting and really allows the things that they specialize in to come to the surface. See, Fern has always been an incredible songwriter. I think that they are legitimately like an amazing lyricist, great vocalist, great guitarist, great at coming up with catchy, memorable rock and pop songs. But where they have always suffered is in the production. The production has always been kind of all over the place on their albums, especially with drumming, because Fern used to use just computerized drums, which never really worked out that well, and then learned how to play the drums, but was never that good at it, and never that good at mixing them on the albums. Well, finally, with this new album, All the Space I've Taken Up, they have adapted this sort of psychedelic 60s and 70s style production, made everything sound kind of trippy and old school, and buried the drums deep into the mix, and done a lot of interesting experimental stuff with them, as well as just all around put a lot of detail into the production of the music. Most of these songs are fairly simple and straightforward pop and rock songs, but what makes them really stand out is the incredibly detailed production, the interesting little experimental tricks that are put all throughout it. It's not the most experimental album you're going to listen to this year by a long shot, but it is the catchiest album you're going to listen to this year that sounds experimental and interesting as it does. Now, there's a few themes that you're going to notice popping up in the lyrics and the content on this album that I think going into it knowing these will enhance your experience. If not, you'll probably figure it out before too very long listening to the lyrics with any attentiveness. But this album deals a lot with the destruction of an old identity and moving into a new one, in more ways than one. The biggest way being becoming trans. Fern is, in the process of this album at least, transitioning from a male to female perspective. And there's a lot of lyrics that deal with this idea of casting off this male identity and embracing this female identity, as well as lots and lots of speaking to the confusion that's been felt over time of like trying to embrace this identity and still wondering if it's completely real, like if it's the right decision to make to do this, but ultimately deciding to go through with it. But more than that, it also talks about just like casting off a lot of the bad things you've done to yourself and other people. There's a lot of lyrics on this album about being self-destructive, about not taking care of your body, about not being worried about physical fitness, or just losing friends constantly and being a bad person, being an angry drunk who throws himself away at parties. And the whole album is sort of about trying to distance yourself from that, but in a positive way, in a self-reaffirming way, in a way that says, like, I'm going to change, and now I'm going in this new direction with a clear mind and bright eyes towards the future, which I really appreciate about the album. I think it's a very affirming, uplifting sort of sound, and it's all helped by the fact that Fern has such a knack for fantastic lyrics. The opening song is called Daughter, and it has this really interesting build-up over the course of the track. It's a short, like 2-minute, punchy punk rock song, but it opens with live noise. Like, you just hear like a crowd at a live show, and when the guitars kick in and start building up and the vocals come in, it all sounds like it's supposed to be on stage, even though as the song goes along, if you know how music production works, you'll quickly realize it is by no means a live performance of the song. And some of the ways that it kind of tricks you into thinking it's a live performance, but then hitting you with these really produced parts is really interesting. It creates a sound as though it is live, but while having noises that couldn't be in a live show, which is really fascinating to me. Like, I picture it as a live show where, like there's 5 Ferns on stage doing backup singing and the saxophone player is a robot or something. Like, that's how it feels to me. But it builds up steadily over the course of the song, where in between the first chorus and second verse, there's like a guitar solo that's pretty good. Then you get this really trippy saxophone solo the next time around, which the saxophones on this album, they are used sparingly, but they sound fucking amazing. They've got like this crazy amount of reverb on them, and they all sound like they're being recorded in, like, I don't know, some kind of hyperbolic time chamber or something. Like, they sound like they're from another planet being beamed into the album, and it's really cool. And then as the song builds up, it suddenly hits this really heavy moment at the end with a major change in the vocal performance and everything, and you know, and that's all along the way. There's always things changing. In spite of just being a 2-minute, straightforward punk rock song, you'll have parts where the vocals start getting distorted, or where background vocals are chirped in at, like, points that they weren't before. You know, it's always evolving until it hits this big moment at the end. Now, the vocal content of the song is very clearly about gender dysphoria and sort of, again, trying to distance yourself from a male identity. But also, just while sort of being in this languid, depressive, and kind of not very serious tone, the first lyrics of the song are, "Fapped the first time since you broke my heart. Fuck, I need some wine and some time apart. And I'm probably not fine if I'm crying in your arms." Which is all extremely evocative, and I love it. I really love the second verse. All of its lyrics are great. I feel this flame that no one knows, and when it got real dark, I burned some old clothes. I turned something into nothing, but that's just how it goes. Well, that's just screaming I was here, and I'm leaning on the mantra just one more year, but I hope I find my way out of the woods because the dawn is near. So, yeah, there's this feeling of, like, trying to, like, getting moody and being, like, you know, being sort of feeling a dysphoria and feeling like, all right, I'm burning my old clothes, I'm trying to distance myself from this identity, but always saying one more year, and then I'll finally do it, but I need to do it soon because it's getting close to the point where I can't hold off anymore. Then we hit, again, the big climax of the song, where Fern pulls out a decidedly masculine voice, like one that is almost like a parody of a male voice, screaming, "So come and take my hand and lead me to the slaughter. I'm not a perfect man, I'll be a perfect daughter. So come and take my hand, I'll walk on boiling water. I'm not a perfect man, I'll be a perfect daughter." Very powerful sounding lyrics, imagery, very evocative, and I love the voice change again, that it's sort of like using this masculine voice to say, like, take this away from me, almost, you know, come take me and kill this person and let me become the daughter that I want to be. It's riveting. And I love the way that this song goes right into Let's Rob a Bank, which is a very different sounding song. Whereas the opener has that live sound, that frenetic energy, Let's Rob a Bank sounds very produced. It's immediately hitting you with these really loud, clean guitars that have this dreamy sound, almost like the song My Friend Marcus by Manchester Orchestra, if anybody knows that song. Like, it's got this, like, this back and forth dreamy sound to it as they're singing, like, "I drank the fly in my whiskey, then sucked the rim of my cup." It's got this almost creepy feeling to it, but then it goes into a really nice bridge, which has the most memorable lyrics on the album, my favorites, singing, "I've been wrong before, for 20 years or more, so let's throw it away, just like recruiters do to my resume." Da 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 da. And then these heavy guitars come kicking in, and we get into the chorus. And it's really interesting that the chorus of this song is super abrasive. Like, this is structured like a pop rock song, but, like, the dreamy passages that are used for the verses are kind of off-putting and you know, and scary, and then you get to the chorus kind of expecting it to to rescue you, and instead it just pummels you with these really heavy guitars, but the lyrics are uplifting, where they're singing, "Gin keeps me warm, you keep me safe, come on girl, let's go, let's rob a bank." Now, if you pay attention to the lyrics of this song, it's very clearly, once again, about getting a fresh start, sort of being poised at the moment of like, all right, we're gonna do this. Like, I've been wrong for 20 years, and I'll be wrong again. The refrain of that line, I'll be wrong again for a year or 10, so let's give it away, just like Andrew Bird in his Line 6 delay. You can look up what that means, but Andrew Bird's a musician, and Line 6 is an amp. Anyways, the point is saying that I've been wrong for all this time, and I will surely be wrong again in the future, but let's cut off right here. Let's make a mark. This is the beginning of our new life. Let's go rob a bank. You know, let's get a new start. Let's go rob a bank, take all that money, and just start over somewhere else. Now, where I really fall in love with this song is after the second verse, where it kicks into this sort of, this very nice sounding passage with these hand-plucked, like, acoustic, like, I want to say like a violin, like it's picking, or a mandolin, rather. These like mandolin parts in there that sounds very nice and fluffy, and the vocal singing, "You lift me up when I'm feeling down, and I start to fly when we dance around." It's great, and then that leads into this badass guitar solo by Tarby, who's another musician from the same community that Fern and I come from. So yeah, very cool shit. I love this song. I've had it stuck in my head ever since the fucking single came out, and I've been listening to it all the time, and I really like it. My hair keeps getting bigger and bigger as this video goes on. I'm starting to look like The Weeknd. So that brings us into Nervous as a Lifestyle, which is a great title for a song. This song, the early part of it is just sort of a surf rock kind of spooky sound from like a very 70s surf sound with these warbling vocals that sound really interesting. I'm not as big a fan of the early part of the song, though I do think it fits the tone. The whole tone of this album really is like somewhere between psychedelic rock, surf rock, like a pinch of shoegaze and a pinch of electronic and a lot of punk attitude, all like culminated into what is otherwise a pop rock album. It's really kind of its own thing. It's very much its own animal, not quite like anything I can think of. Nervous as a Lifestyle takes a sort of us versus them approach in the lyrics of like saying, you know, we're these sort of weirdos, we're gonna explode, we're just we're fucking losing it, and the world, they don't care, but as long as I've got you, everything's gonna be okay. That's another big theme on this album is love. There's a lot of themes about often referring to someone as Bug, like sort of a character Bug who is like, you know, someone who can help you through all of these problems. You know, Fern is sort of saying, I'm grappling with this dysphoria, with these problems in my life that I want to change, but you are making that possible. You are helping me in this endeavor. And where this song really takes off is about the midway point, where it suddenly springs into this really epic sounding chord progression where there's just like all this instrumentation sweeping across. It's a very similar sound to the song One More Time, One More Chance. If any of you happen to know that song from that's most famously used in the movie 5 centimeters per second, I doubt Fern knows that song, but it gives me that vibe, and it's a very cool, that's one of my favorite songs as well. So the lyrics in that part, though, really get to me, particularly for the line, "Will you pet my head, stroke me when I'm stoned, give it to me straight till we're fucking old." I really, really love that line. I feel like that is exactly the kind of romance I look for and have in my own life. Just the imagery of stroke me when I'm stoned, I particularly appreciate, because I'm somebody who likes to lay on a lap when I'm feeling down and altered, you know. And that brings me to one of my favorite tracks on the album, again, Ember, which is a song that I've been familiar with since all the way back in June, I want to say, maybe even late May. Where I visited Fern at their house in Pittsburgh for a couple days, right as the genesis of this album was sort of happening. And Fern was saying, like, I'm not going to release any of this until 2018, and I'm going to, like, really put my nose to the grindstone on perfecting these songs, because a lot of Fern's previous releases were very, like, you know, very prolific and in the moment, and, like, I wrote it and now it's done. This one was definitely more of a meditated album, trying to make it something really special, which was a success, in my opinion. But the song Ember was being written while I was at Fern's house, and I've had it stuck in my head since the first fucking time that I heard them playing it on the acoustic guitar. Like, the very first time that Fern sat down to record a demo, this song has been in my head ever since, because it has the catchiest melody of all time. Oh, I don't think that I can wait for December. My heart is an ember, and you are the flame. And, yeah, you'll hear that melody about 8 times in the song, with different lyrics, and it is just, it's the ultimate earworm. So this song has a really interesting structure. It opens up with the sound of a clock ticking. It's very reminiscent of something like on an early Pink Floyd album. I mean, specifically the song Time, but, like, you know, it sounds like something like that, and then it cuts into just this sort of dreamy surf rock, very, like, laid back, by the beach kind of sounding verses, which as the song goes along, each time you hear the verse, it's changed a little bit. Maybe there'll be a different guitar sound or a different drum sound or just some added effects in the background. It's always evolving in subtle ways, but the verses lead into this chorus where it becomes this really lush psychedelic song out of nowhere, and it sounds fucking great. They transition into each other really perfectly. I fucking love the cyclical, like, nature of this song, and of course the melody of the chorus is also super memorable. You've been by my side, pretending I was your docile dog or parasite. Frequent flip-flops made me wanna flee. Tune in for the sound of my misery. Do-do-do-do-do-do. Oh, I love it. It's such a great song. And then it goes into this ending section at the very back where there's these a cappella vocals underneath the main melody, which sounds fucking great. I love a cappella vocals, and there's a part where all the background voices, like, join in for one line of the singing. It sounds really fantastic. It's a really great song. I'm so glad it's finally out there in the world, because I've been singing it to myself for literally 6 months now, and, like, not been able to explain to people what the hell it is. So, yeah, huge fan, and this song was really meaningful for me and my girlfriend, because it just so happened we had started dating right when the song came out, and at the time, she didn't think, like, we had been talking about trying to move in together, and she was like, I still have to do another semester of college, and I won't be done until December. And so, like, we might not be able to move in until December. And I literally was saying to her, like, oh, I don't think that I could wait for December. So, yeah, it was a very romantic song for us at the time. And it's also, the lyrics of this one are a little bit more esoteric. I can't say I completely understand what the song's about, but it definitely seems to be more in the category of discussing a relationship than it is the more dysphoric issues and things like that. Although, I don't know, there seems to be a lot going on in this song, but it's sort of it seems to be like questioning a relationship. Like, will this work out? Are we right for each other? Sort of discussing the way that each person in the relationship seems to perceive the relationship and whether or not those are healthy perceptions. And that leads into a short interlude, which is kind of a strange spot on the album, because it's clearly meant to sound like this sort of improvised performance of the main melody of the song on, like, a cheap little keyboard piano. And I like the way that it transitions out of Ember, because it's got this sort of, this haunting, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, static to it, or like there's, like, it's picking up a lot of sound. It sounds creepy in a way, but I like the way it goes out of that song, but then it transitions into this other melody that doesn't transition into the next song, so I'm not really sure what that melody's about, why it's there. It just goes on a little longer than I think it maybe needed to, but it also breaks the album kind of into halves, because the first 4 tracks are all very much in the same vein of like complete pop songs. Like, these are 4 songs that have really driving rhythms that are really like verse, chorus, verse to completion kind of thing. And then the rest of the album's very different from that in its structure, and especially the next song, Julian, which is a straight-up acoustic folk ballad, a fucking dirge, if you will, of self-loathing. Now, Julian's one of my least favorite songs on this album, mostly because it's a very, like, dismal and moody song. It's a very, like, self-destructive song, if anything, which feels kind of out of place amidst an album that is otherwise all fun and games, for the most part. Like, even if the lyrics can get really dark, the album is always, like, upbeat and fun to listen to, and this song is so dour, it really, like, flies in the face of the rest of the tone. And also there's the fact that the song is, like, literally the song Pure Comedy by Father John Misty. Like, I know that Fern is a big fan of Father John Misty, and this song is just a Father John Misty song, even lyrically, because so many of Father John Misty's songs are just, like, addressing the self and sort of bashing on it, you know? And this song is titled Julian in reference to Fern's past male identity of Julian. For anyone not familiar with this story, and I don't know how much Fern would even want to go on about this at length, but Fern was originally Jeff Burgess, and that's like their birth name, and then changed their name to Julian Moon for a while, before eventually changing it again to Fern, as adopting this new sort of trans identity as opposed to the former male one. So this song seems to be addressed to the male identity that Fern is trying to leave behind, or at least trying to, like, address the problems with it. And some of those are really interesting lyrically on this song. My problems with the song have nothing to do with the lyrics. It's just the fact that it sounds like a Father John Misty song and cuts out the tone of the album so much. I also think there's a few moments where the drums are a little clumsy on here, and they kind of hurt the build-up, because the song has a really great build-up. It slowly introduces more and more instruments and builds and becomes more cacophonous as it goes, and also more unhinged as Fern's vocal performance kind of turns into like a drunken karaoke performance in a way. Like, when Fern starts hitting the really high register notes and is just like just screaming about this pain, you know, it almost feels like someone giving a performance at a bar who is just like drunk and at the end of their rope, which I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing, but it's interesting. But the lyrics on here are pretty good. It's much more direct than any other song on the album about exactly what the problems are and the sources of dysphoria that Fern is feeling. Julian, all the stupid stubble on my face, 230 pounds of fucking waste, worst palette I could work with, what a start. So obviously referring to the first makeup palette that Fern attempted to use is the worst palette that they could have worked with. Julian, you gotta treat your body with some care. You gotta stop sad cutting off your hair. You've made this so damn hard. Later, break me down, rebuild me as you please. I want to change, I'm begging for release, and I don't think I can do it all alone. What's the worst thing I could do? Waste a year or waste a whole life through? How many memories must I disown? I like that line, waste a year or waste a lifetime through. You'll remember earlier on the album there was reference to the mantra, just one more year. But, you know, if we continue to wait another year, is that just a waste of a year performing this identity that you no longer relate to? And, you know, what is at stake by not, you know, becoming this other identity? What if you waste that whole life by never actually beginning it? So the song seems to be saying to Julian, like, you need to go. Like, you are the representation of all these problems in my life that I'm trying to put behind me. You're the representation of this dysphoria that I'm trying to escape. I don't know how true this is, by the way. I don't want to put any words in Fern's mouth. I didn't run any of this by them before I made it. I'm just saying what I interpret out of the album. as a friend. Now, something I do like about the way that Julian transitions into the next song on the album is that after that huge, long dirge of a song, the longest track on the album at a mere 4 minutes, it has this sort of quiet section, and then it cuts in with the loudest, most abrasive, fun, punk rock song on the record, which is This Fiction, which actually addresses some of the same issues as Julian before it. For instance, this idea that Fern treated fitness as the anti-fun, and this sort of, a lot of the self-destructive tendencies are really brought up on this song. A lot of the stuff about partying too much and throwing yourself away, and then realizing not only that you need to change, but that you need the people around you to help you change, and that they need to change as well, and like if you can all do it together, then that might be a more powerful force for good. And this song has really cool vocals that are sort of like oscillating on this like really loud abrasive frequency. It's almost like a noise rock song. It's really cool. I am definitely a fan of the sound of this track. And I would say that that characterizes the second half of this album pretty well, which is that from here on out, it's less that the songs are like these complete pop songs, and more that each one is like an experimental sort of tangent. There's a lot more just weird ideas and offshoots and production gimmicks on this half of the album, some of which work out really well, some of which are kind of questionable. For instance, the song The Worry has some really interesting effects. It's got this almost shoegaze sound, like it's like a surf rock shoegaze song, which is really interesting. I mean, the shoegaziness is mostly in the vocals, but and the saxophones that come in later, but it's got this very dreamy sort of vibe, this laid back, again, by the beach sort of feeling to it. I would say this is lyrically the least interesting song on the album. It does some fun things with the vocal performance, but the lyrics really didn't strike out to me at all. But there's this fucking awesome moment where the saxophone cuts in and plays the main melody, and it's like mind-altering. The saxophone sounds so fucking cool all over this album. I really love it. I also love the way that the chorus sort of tapers into this, "Do you know what loving feels like?" which sounds extremely Ariel Pink. Overall, it's an okay song. I don't love it. I don't hate it. I think it has interesting ideas, though. And after that is The Bad Times, which is sort of a production marvel of a track. It's only about 2 minutes long. It's just this creepy little offshoot song that has just really interesting sound to it. It opens with these electronic noises and this extremely modified vocal that sounds like something out of like a Proto Men or a Daft Punk song. Like, it sounds like a robot voice, but it sounds great because it's with this really low voice, and it starts with the lyrics like long trip, absinthe drips from my eyes, but like with about 10 layers of modification on it. The bass just kind of drips into the song, and then some guitars drip in, and like the whole thing has this very natural evolution, and I love the way the chorus sounds. I love the way the song ends. It's just a really good sounding song, and it transitions wonderfully into the next track, which is another great sounding song, which is The Ashes. Now, The Ashes sounds almost exactly like it belongs on Portugal the Man's The Satanic Satanist, and I know this was not on purpose. Fern does not listen to Portugal the Man. It is just some bizarre accident that it sounds just like their music from that era, but it totally does. But it's got a really cool, like, mixed production sound where different parts are coming through it, like different audio quality almost. There's like a boom ba da 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 doom vocal that's going on over everything that sounds like it was recorded on like an iPhone or something, whereas other parts are recorded in different levels of quality. It all sounds cool together. It's got a really memorable riff. It's got like a stomp and clap rhythm, and this group vocal that sounds like it's performed by the Undead. Like the chorus, "We return to the ashes." It's like a group vocal between a bunch of people who sound dead, like a moaning from the depths, which is completely appropriate given the subject matter of the song. It's called The Ashes, which seems to be in reference to basically living poor, which I've been to Fern's house. I know the lifestyle of Fern and their friends, and yeah, they're dirt broke. They don't have much. Everything they have is sort of hand-me-down or secondhand or, like, you know, thrift shop and repaired by hand, which is referenced in these lyrics. We return to the ashes, sleep on old broken mattresses, same old holes, custom patches. We return to the ashes. Always that element of DIY in there. Fern, I've been to Fern's house again, and there's lots and lots of creativity in how their house is set up. Lots of tapestries all over the walls, lots of repaired equipment, things that were found, again, in like a thrift shop and then like repaired. And they're all very, very good with that kind of stuff. It's really cool. And the song definitely is championing that sort of ingenuity in spite of living this sort of lower class lifestyle. Can't you see we're living in a nightmare, but we've got our dreams? This ain't no debate club, are you killing me? Champagne, peanut butter, vitamins, and weed. We're headed for the streets. It's just sort of an encapsulation of just like the general lifestyle of Fern and friends. And that brings us to the end of the line, which is another sound-alike song. This one probably deliberate because it sounds like a St. Vincent song, and I know Fern's a huge fan of St. Vincent. This one's almost comical how much it sounds like a St. Vincent song, but, you know, whether or not that bothers you, whether you listen to St. Vincent, I mean, it doesn't, like, bother me, but I just can't help but think about it. Like, the vocal performances, you could have told me St. Vincent sang this song and I'd almost believe you. And the guitar licks in between verses, that sounds like something off of the self-titled St. Vincent album. The song has some really solid riffs. It has great piano intrusions as it goes along. This is another song where each time you hear a verse, something is different about it, like a different instrument has kicked in, playing little melodies over top of stuff, which I like. Overall, this is one of my less favorite songs on the album. I don't think it has too many standout lyrics or vocal takes. I would say it's probably vocally the weakest song, which is, you know, Fern is an incredible vocalist, so I feel like taking advantage of that is always an important part of a great Fern track, but this one, the vocals are pushed a little bit more to the back in favor of the guitars. It's still fine. One line I do want to point out is the lyric, "I'm sick and sad and gay," which I hope is a Gay and Dead reference. If it is, thanks, Fern. And that brings us to the final 2.5-minute track, Maybe I'm Crying, which admittedly is my least favorite song on the album. I don't think it's particularly standout in terms of being memorable or anything, but it does work well as a final track. It works well as a sort of sign-off and a final closure of the themes of the album. My biggest problem with this track is that it's a very slow, vocally driven song, but the vocals are a bit much. This sort of whining, maybe I'm crying, that happens over and over again is just a tad much for me, but I still appreciate the actual lyrics. Maybe I'm crying, it's too late to find the source, and I can't go home anymore. My old self is dying, oh bug am I dying? Sometimes I don't get the world, and I'm just another girl. There's this, yeah, obviously the crying without really knowing why, just a general sense of dysphoria, of like not really being sure what's wrong, but something's wrong. The sensation that the old self is dying, and the question, oh bug, am I dying? Like, for my old self to die, is that actually me? Am I actually just killing the whole self that I've been and becoming something new? I don't know. I don't understand the world, and sometimes I'm just another girl, you know? And, yeah, I think the song has... I like the instrumental build of it, kind of. It goes from, like, just, like, long keyboard chords into sort of a poppy, more upbeat sounding song. And then it has a refrain of the final part from Daughter at the very end of the track, which is nice. It's a nice way to tie up, round out the album. Just overall not the strongest track. But anyways, that's all the songs. That's all the space I've taken up. I really hope you give this album a listen. I'm pretty excited about it. I'm really glad to have the opportunity to promote one of Fern's albums because, again, I have been not only good friends with them for 4 years, but a big fan. You know, the last few releases haven't had any songs, like, there's been, like, a couple songs here and there that I really like, but not, like, a whole project that I was really excited about until this one, and I am really excited about it. It'll probably be on my end of the year favorites list, and if you want to be someone who's in on the ground floor of some fucking shit that no one's listening to, here's your chance, because literally the videos have, like, you know, a couple hundred views. There's like 10 people who've purchased this on Bandcamp, maybe 15. So, you know, go ahead and be the next one. It's got my seal of approval and endorsement. See you next time.